Hello and welcome to The Well-Dressed Mind, where we explore the intersection of personal style and professional success. I'm your host, Lindsay Nicholas. In this series, we'll have honest conversations with accomplished individuals, leaders, creatives, entrepreneurs about how they've built their lives, their careers, and their identities. Because style isn't just what you wear, it's how you show up to the world. It's a signal of self-worth, a reflection of values, and sometimes a quiet source of power. Here, fashion isn't frivolous, it's foundational, and I can't wait to share these stories with you. Richard Misso is a creative leader, entrepreneur, and tastemaker whose influence spans design, media, and culture. As founder and creative director of the Stylesmiths, he leads a national network of designers redefining accessible, high-end design across Australia and the UK. His mission is simple: make great design for everyone. Beautiful, bespoke, and reflective of individual lifestyle and personality. Beyond the Stylesmiths, Richard is the founder and editor of a globally recognized online publication celebrating design, innovation, authenticity, and independent editorial voice. Richard is known for blending editorial vision with creative direction, pairing the precision of design with the emotion of storytelling, much like a great fashion designer crafting a collection. Got those last little words out there. Welcome to The Well-Dressed Mind, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. So I am a client of the Stylesmiths. So I actually employed the Stylesmiths, I guess coming on, it'll be almost actually 4 years ago. And you guys did my store on Little Collins Street.
Which looks great.
Which looks fantastic. And again, we're 4 years in now. We've had that store for 4 years. And it's so timeless. You know, everything that you did really is beautiful today. You know, it's not trendy. It's as beautiful today as it was.
But I think your choices were really simple, refined, you know, and allow the clothes to be the hero rather than the architecture. So it's like a beautiful blend of both.
That's what we wanted. And it's actually quite interesting. I don't want to get completely off topic here, but I still have the renderings that Nicole, who works with you, Nicole gave me for the store. And it's basically our front window has a single t-shirt hanging in the window. And now sometimes we'll pile things in and I'll just walk in the store and go okay, I've got to take out that picture again, because that's what this store is meant to look like. It's meant to be very, very minimalist. And sometimes you just can't help yourself because you just want to put everything in the window, and we've done that ourselves. So the philosophy of the Stylesmiths is about making great design accessible. So how do you define accessible luxury? What does that really mean?
Yeah, look, I think making things accessible is it's kind of like high-low fashion in many ways, where people have a mix of different things. For us at the Stylesmiths, the ethos of that was born by a lot of people that love and aspire to have these interiors that they see in magazines, don't know where to go. And then when they do go somewhere, or they find that studio that designed that house in Vogue or El Decor, and then they find out they can't actually enter that world because the cost of the design fees, are so exorbitant. But also you can't buy as little or as much design as you need.
Yeah.
So our philosophy was, why don't we sell design so that people can buy as much as they can afford? So whether it be a small concept, we're choosing some paint colors, but then we thought, well, how do we go even further? And that was, well, why don't we have emerging designers and senior designers available, depending on what you're looking to do. So for instance, if you're just doing a small decorator project, you're a young person, never really hired designers before, or you're a startup fashion brand, which we've just done a beautiful one in London actually, where the client had, an online presence. They were doing their first bricks and mortar, and they were able to access a junior designer who's just graduated, a graduate that brought a whole lot of ideas, was able to work on a shoestring budget to bring that vision to life. So we are, as far as I know, the only studio in the world that actually has the client's ability to choose an emerging designer or a senior designer, work and buy as much or as little design as you want, but also from a studio that's been awarded, Best Interior Design Awards globally, shortlisted for Dulux Awards and finalists, published in magazines such as Architecture Digest, Vogue, El Decor, all these magazines around the world, which is our work that our studio has produced. But we don't have any attitude. We find a lot of people are very intimidated by design and interior designers. They think they don't belong in that world. And so by allowing our platform to be able to connect people and work out, analyze what they want, we're able to provide this really extraordinary service that I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's this little back end where I've got all these designers that work for me, and my job as a director of that company is to empower them to achieve the best that they can be. And I've got a lot of designers that have worked in the industry for decades, which can be quite toxic, I think, which can be with fashion as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where you work for a studio and you should be grateful that you've got a job with them is the attitude. Whereas we're really grateful that they're working with us. And so a lot of our teams say, this is the first time in my whole life working in design that I've been truly happy.
That's brilliant.
And that's kind of where it all came from.
That's brilliant. And I know, so when I first started working with you, again, it was for the store. And I loved the option that I could have had a more junior, obviously would cost less, or I could have somebody senior. I chose to go for the senior because at the level that I wanted the store, and it was, timing wise, I wanted to get it finished quickly. So I thought I'm going to go for the expertise so I worked with Nicole. And I was so pleased with the experience of working with you that now you guys have been doing my house. And just exactly what you said. So I think I had you come in for just a small project. And I think it's actually 3 years now we've been working together, because I finished one room and then I'm like, oh, but now the other room doesn't look as good. So it's like rolling thunder. I just keep coming back for more over and over and over again. So you've done a great job, and you definitely have me hooked 100%.
Yeah, thank you.
So you built this design brand that celebrates individuality. And how do you encourage your clients and your teams to express themselves? And I know from working with you that it's a very collaborative process. It's very co-creating, which I absolutely love, especially being a designer. I'm sure some people don't want to touch it, don't want anything to do with it, but I love that you allow me to be part of the process as well. So just talk me through that.
Yeah, so like from the get-go, when someone goes onto the website, they have to actually select a bunch of images that resonate with them. So they might be for different reasons. They're clicking on various pictures of work, and then that kind of creates a little kind of mini mood board for us in the office to analyze, to work out like, who are these people? What are they like? And then we'll analyze that with our design team and work out who kind of aligns with that style. But when we train our designers, we kind of ask them to really investigate who the people are that live or occupy the spaces.
Okay.
What is, for instance, in your case, what is the brand? What is the identity? What do you need to hero? And we work backwards from that. Sometimes when we've got clients that are lawyers, doctors, accountants, they're clueless. They're freaked out by the whole process. They don't like back and forth, organic.
Okay.
We even get clients that will say, they'll ring me and say, I don't know what I'm paying you for because I'm having to make decisions. And it's like, yes, you are, because you live there. We can't force you to buy anything, but we can definitely present things that we think you're going to connect with.
Yeah.
The key to what we do is making sure that our client's DNA is all over the project.
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah, so they can take real pride and real joy in what we've created for them, but with them. It's always a collaboration. If it's not, the project is just a styling event.
Yeah.
Like a little photo shoot. It doesn't resonate with anyone. They may like it, but they're certainly not going to connect to it.
So I loved going through that process with you. I loved the process where I had to select, images, and it's interesting. So when I started working on my house, and I'm a very minimalist aesthetic, and that's what's in my clothing line, and it's very interesting. So I thought I was headed one direction, and I thought it was going to be very minimalist, and I think in houses I've had before, it's always mid-century modern. There's a lot of neutrality in the color palette, but then I do a lot of pops of color in the art. And it's very interesting. So the way the house has evolved for me now is it's actually something that has a lot of color and has a lot of pattern and has a lot of texture. And I didn't know that I was going down that path. And it was really interesting working with the Stylesmiths. You helped me to see that that's actually an aesthetic that I love. And interestingly, I sort of joke about this sometimes. I live about 3 blocks back from the Bay in Melbourne, and Melbourne is cold. It's cold a lot. So what I'm finding is you'd think my house would look more like a beach house, but what I'm finding, because I think I'm cold whenever I'm making all these choices for the 10 months a year that it's pretty much cold in Melbourne, my house is starting to look like a hunting lodge.
Yeah.
More than a seaside beach retreat, but I absolutely love it. I couldn't possibly love it anymore. So you guys have been very foundational with me in terms of helping me achieve something that I didn't even know that I wanted. So
on that, when we first introduced that booking form, which ended up turning into a software program, But that booking form, when we market tested it in a focus group, everybody said, I hate it. It's too long. There's too many choices. Cut it down to like 3 or 4 clicks.
Okay.
And I was like, it just doesn't seem right.
You can't know anything about
I'm like,
somebody in 3 or 4
I'm like,
clicks.
it doesn't seem right. But there's 20 people telling me this. So then in the end, we ran clients, live clients that were actually doing it. And the opposite was told. They were like, oh my God, I loved it.
Okay.
I felt like my project was beginning. It forced me to think about things without having to put too much energy. I was like, oh yeah, I do like that.
Yeah.
And I do like that. So they felt like the process was beginning. So I think what I learned from that whole process was don't trust the focus group unless the focus group are people that will actually need what you're trying to focus on.
I had spent many years in advertising and marketing, so I've been to many a focus group, and I find it to be a very artificial environment. Mm-hmm. And then there's usually one person that will say something and everybody sort of follows along that path, but it's not the way you think in the real world.
No, it's not. And also, like, if you're a user of that and you're going to be needing that product, what you're going to get walk away with it is very different to what somebody who has no, want or need for that product.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. So you've been both a creative director and an editor, and how do those roles influence the way you see trends, the way you see materials, the way you see aesthetics evolving? What are you seeing?
Yeah, look, I think the editorial background gave me a lot of insight into product development and how things come about. And I remember in the earlier days when I was doing editorial, but also working in a supplier capacity under another company that I had.
Okay.
And I remember meeting with Qantas, and they were doing the new Qantas lounges, the ones with Mark Misso.
Okay.
And I had just got back from the Milan fair, and I noticed that all the timbers had changed from Wengi. I don't know if you remember Wengi.
I actually did love, I still love Wengi.
Right, yeah. So Wengi really was supreme. Yeah. I think, would that be the 90s?
Yes.
Yeah, I think late 90s Wengi was...
Yeah, early 2000. I think I had an apartment in New York that I had a lot of Wengi pieces.
It's very beautiful. It's very chocolate. It's really dark.
Yeah.
And then I went over to the Milan fair and noticed that all the timbers were changing to teak.
Okay.
And I came back and I said to Qantas, who had specified Wengi pretty much for everything, with the architectural practice they were using, and I said, look, just throwing it out there, this is what I believe is going to be dominating for the next 10 years.
Okay. And is that really what a trend does in interior design?
Yeah, in the built environment, it doesn't just go away. It will stick around for around 10 years as part of the built environment.
Okay.
So you really need to kind of get that right. And just the other day I saw that Qantas lounge just won an award for being the best first-class lounge in the world, still today. And it's like kind of blonde teak timbers, which they changed based on that. And I think trends are interesting things that people definitely do follow, but it's a really long process to get it there. Like it just happens so far in advance and fashion and interiors are so married closely together. But then things like war, droughts, all those things influence how we live, So when there's a global financial crisis or wars on, like things like chrome and polished metals will become burnished and less showy, and I think it's the same for fashion. And then I remember like during drought, there was a lot of aqua colours that were beginning to dominate, greens, blues, where people were almost hydrating.
Okay.
And then desert tones were falling into place in interiors where you've got peaches, browns, terracottas, and little tinges of pink.
But that's all fascinating. I mean, I certainly know it from a design perspective, like certainly coming out of COVID, I think there was sparkle everywhere, everybody just wanted something that made them feel good, made them feel alive. But I guess I've never really thought about it from a perspective of interior design. And that's actually really fascinating to know that it's got about a 10-year life cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is obviously much longer than fashion, of course, unless you're we try to do like timeless things that there isn't really a expiration date on them because they work, and that's something I'm always cognizant of when I'm in my house. So talking about that, you're talking about Stylesmiths. If Stylesmiths were a fashion brand, like what kind of brand would it be? What do you think that would actually look like?
Yeah, good question. It would be eclectic. We are one of the only studios that you'll find that doesn't actually have style. Because as I said to you, we define ourselves by what our clients want, by their brief. Whereas if you went to some of the more notable studios, they have a particular aesthetic, a DNA. So like when you're driving in your car and you look in the rearview mirror and you see a Bentley behind you, you only have to clock the headlight or the grille to know it's a Bentley.
Yes.
And I think that's the same with a lot of interior design studios or fashion houses, where you, like, so if you were to look towards, Christian Dior, there's some classic silhouettes.
Absolutely.
That are very Dior,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, it's a
New
Dior
look.
or a Chanel,
Yes.
And I think that's the same with interiors. But for us, we're one of the very few people that is focused on the client. We're very client-centric to lead the design influence. So they come to us generally going, I'm not really quite sure who I am, or what I want.
Yeah.
And then we go through that exploration.
That's interesting. I'll just interject
Yeah.
for 1 second. I know when I was going through the process with you, that when I found the designer that I wanted to work with, I did notice that some of what she had worked on was a lot of country coastal, which is not where what I was looking, at the time was not looking where I was looking for the house. And it's just really interesting. Just, you get with a really good designer and they take the brief.
Yes.
They understand the brief, they understand what I want, but then adding in things that, again, as we talked about, things that I didn't know that I wanted.
That's
which
right.
Really, that's why I love the co-creation process. I love the collaborative process.
Yeah, so our brand would be very eclectic.
Okay.
It wouldn't have a particular DNA or style, but we would be focused probably on, things other than fast fashion.
Without question. Yeah.
Looking for things that will stand the test of time. Much like yourself, how you like to have core essentials that
Absolutely
can go across seasons as well. Not just one just for spring. You really think about those materials, and I feel like that's a real thing that people forget that interior designers do.
And it's global. I think that being a global business, and you're a global business as well, you really have to take that into consideration. And my client travels. She's on a plane all the time. She's traveling. She's going between seasons, and she needs the same pieces that are going to work in a Melbourne winter that are going to work in a New York City summer. That's it. You don't want to have two wardrobes. You just want to have one wardrobe that fits your whole life.
That's right. And same for us. We have people with families, children, pets. All of that's going to be taken into consideration. And then even little things like, how do you watch TV?
Yeah. Do
you lay down on the sofa? Do you sit up straight?
Yeah.
All those little things we have to address. Otherwise, the client is going to invest in something quite expensive and hate the experience after.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of questioning, a lot of psychology. And then you've got the couples that will fight, in the appointments, the meetings, because they can't agree. But we have to keep them together because they're both considering themselves decision makers. So there is all that. And I think that's why interior design makes great TV as well, when you see those decorator shows where the clients are, looking like they're frustrated with the process. But it is a frustrating process. But once you get past that moment, it's like,
I watch a lot of brand design. It's one of my favorite shows.
Too.
Yeah, I love all the iterations. I love the Australian one. I love the New Zealand one. I love the UK one. And it's interesting because you see the couples when they start out and they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
They look healthy.
And they look healthy. They look healthy. And then, and they're going to finish the project in, 6 months, and their budget's $700,000 and whatever.
Windows haven't arrived.
And then, 3 years later you see them, and you can see the strain on people's faces when they go through that, and like 3 years later, the project's not done. I was actually just watching one the other day, that same situation, and you're like, is the couple still together? Because it is a very tense thing. Because it's a very personal thing. I mean, this is something that you're going to be, an environment that you're going to be living in, and it's going to affect your life every single day when you wake up and see your wallpaper or don't see your wallpaper, or how the lights work. Like it's such a personal thing. Like it can really make or break.
There was one time we had a client we were working with, and with the project, all the furniture was being ordered and placed, and they'd paid up. And then we got a phone call from the husbands saying, can we get everything here quicker? And we're like, oh, we can't, everything's been made. And he said, oh, well, I'm terminally ill now, and I'm not going to be here for when it's finished. And I want to be here to
enjoy it.
Experience it. And it was that sad moment. We were all on the phones ringing with suppliers saying, what can you do? Some suppliers, sadly, were like, no refund, no help, and others were great, But it is very, when you have those moments, you realize just what we are doing. We are creating little oases for people to live in, majority of the time, but even workplaces where people can, thrive in their business, anchor really good staff, and bring in clients, present well. So there's all of that. And there's so many, I think it's very human-centric right across the board what we do. And it really hinges all the time on what our clients are willing to trust us with.
Okay.
There's a lot of trust.
Yeah. And it is, just as I believe fashion is, and again, it is transformational. The way you wake up in the morning and you walk through your house and go to your work environment, that is really going to affect the way your day is. Like I just, as we talk about in the introduction to this podcast, that fashion isn't frivolous. And I feel like the same thing with design and style. Like it's the things, it's the pillow that you put your head on every night. It's the comforter that you pull up. It's all those things, the couch you sit on, it all really matters. So it's not frivolous. And I just want to make that point, but I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast already knows that. So as a creative director, your personal style inevitably becomes part of the brand. So how intentional are you about how you dress, and how does it align with your design philosophy?
Yeah, look, I think from a really young age, my mother, she was a beauty queen back in the day.
Oh, wow.
So she was the first coloured Miss London.
Oh, wow.
And she just, with 4 boys, I never ever, I actually wrote her a letter last week just talking about this.
Okay.
And she lives in Melbourne, but I sent her a letter just something nice.
That's
to open
such
up,
a beautiful thing to
and,
do.
but I was just talking about that to her, that I never saw her looking disheveled.
Yeah.
Raising 4 boys,
Wow.
not on her own, but just, back then women did everything on their own,
Yes.
even without a husband.
Yes.
And, but she just always came to the party, but she always instilled in us as well that we all had to dress well. And I'm glad that she did, because when you dress well, people treat you better.
Without question.
And you also feel a sense of pride. So like even my partner, he, we were living in East Melbourne, we popped out to get some ice cream, and he said, "Oh, is this okay?" And I said, "Well, if you have to ask, you know the answer."
That's so funny.
And he goes, "No, I'm fine." And I'm like, "Okay." And we were crossing the road to get some ice cream, and a soup kitchen had just arrived. And they went over to Greg and said, "By the way, I haven't seen you here before, but the soup kitchen's going to arrive in about half an hour." They thought he was homeless.
Yeah.
And he was wearing a beanie, and he had a bit of scruff on, and he laughed, but he's remembered it. But I feel like when you dress well, or as well as you can, you just elevate your day that little bit more. And I think with the brand as well, being in interiors, I think there's an expectation as well for us to present well, to kind of show a little bit of our personality, who we are, as well through that. And I think people make that connection.
You really have to. And I do think now it's actually easier. There's a democratization, I guess, of fashion, if you will, that you can actually look great at a lot of different price points now. Mm-hmm. I know when I was growing up, and maybe my perception is incorrect, but my perception when I was growing up, like you needed money to dress well. And we all had to have the Levi 501s, and we had to have the button down, we had the polo shirt with the collar popped and all these things. But I think now, and I'm not a proponent of fast fashion in any way, shape or form, but there's fashion available at every price point. There's amazing secondhand stores where you can go in. So I do think, regardless of your financial situation, there's lots of ways to still put yourself together. Like style doesn't cost money. It's just it's having
really doesn't.
Taste. Yeah,
it's having taste, and that's the hard thing.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people don't know how to get to taste levels that they want, or simply don't care. Yeah.
Which is hard for hard for people. Like I get up in the morning, and the act of getting dressed every day is so much fun that I don't understand people that don't enjoy that process. What am I going to wear? How am I putting it together? How am I going to accessorize it? Am I pulling the sleeve up? What am I doing? And it's just, to me, such a part of my creative journey. And it's just interesting. But I know that there are a lot of people. Did you sew
when you were younger?
I actually did not. So I did go to FIT and studied fashion design at Parsons. And I took all the courses. I did the pattern making. I did all the sewing. I actually hired a sewing tutor to help me, because if I sew, I break the needle, and I have no idea how I can. So I don't have a lot of the tactile skills. I think I've just got a great creative eye, and it's really nice now having a team where I've got an amazing design director. So she and I will usually come up with the idea for the piece, and then we'll work together, and I can just go like, there's something about that collar that I'm not loving, and she will look at me and say, it needs to go 1 millimeter here, and the button pulling here, and and she just she can interpret my language and make it happen, which I really love. So having a team, I think, and you've talked about this too with Stylesmiths, it's all about the team, and getting the right people involved. So you've built a company that's much about culture and creativity. So how do you cultivate an environment? We talked a little bit about this before the cameras are rolling, where designers and clients feel empowered to express their individuality. Like, talk to me about your teams and how they work together. And you talked about how they love coming to work. Why is that? What do you do differently?
Yeah, look, I think what we do is we empower them to make decisions. So a good example, one of our designers in Sydney, sorry.
I was doing that on our last podcast. I was having a little...
one of our designers in Sydney, she'd been working in a studio for 6 years as a junior designer, but she was not even able to select a tile sample for a project.
Wow.
Yeah, the directors would do all of that. So she was doing documentation after documentation, which was very crushing for her. And she wasn't also able to go out onto site, to learn how things go together. And 6 years at a big studio where she would work from 8 in the morning till around 7 p.m. every night, if not later when they were at tender. And but told as well that there's like 100 other people willing to take her spot.
Isn't that the worst thing?
Yeah.
I heard that when I worked in advertising, you would hear that all the time. Like, I didn't personally hear it, but it was known that if you don't want this job, there are 100 other people lined up that do want your job.
And sadly there are.
Yeah.
Because of the name on the door. Whereas with us, what we do is we look for designers that are looking for that pathway to individual greatness, to work under our umbrella where they're supported by the company, by our insurance, by our media, by our marketing. So for instance, when a designer works on a project and we decide, we're going to shoot it, or we're going to put it into a competition, we also list their personal name.
Okay.
We also gift them a set of the photos that they can use on their own private social media, on their own private business. And they don't pay for that. And, to have a project photographed, you're looking at about $3,000, $4,000. And then you've got to get a license for those designers as well to be able to use them.
Sure.
So there's all these things that come into play. So we always approach things within the studio. How does this impact the designer? Will they see this as a good thing? Are we being fair and equitable across everything? Yeah. And then in regards to the clients, all of those things have a knock-on effect where our designers are fully empowered to do well, stay on platform, we train them, we offer them all sorts of things to get them up to where they need to go. So even designers that start as juniors, have pathways to become seniors.
Yeah, it sounds like just an amazing environment. And I've always had the mentor who told me once years and years ago that happy people make you money too. So there's obviously you want to see them flourish, you want to see them grow, but it's also good business.
Yeah.
It's good business because people that are involved in the business feel that they're appreciated. They're going to go the extra mile. They're going to stay till 7, but love it. Yeah. Because they're so involved in the project and it's so passionate. So you talked a little bit before about like the changes, which was really fascinating to me, like the Wenge to the teak. Where do you see Australian design heading next, and what global influence excites you the most?
I think Australian design is really exciting, especially in my industry of interiors and architecture, because we don't have a lot of heritage overlays. So we're able to lead in so many innovative ways that Europe, for instance, doesn't have the ability to do, because they're really confined by heritage overlays and leaseholds and freeholds, and you can't move a sink from here or over there because 200 years ago that's where it was and that's where it should stay. Whereas here we don't have that. America has its kind of own thing going on with interiors as well, but I think for Australia it's all about organic products, organic materials, stone, timbers, and I think they're really dominating. And I think as we live in a world that's more clinical, those organic elements coming into the home, I think, are really widely celebrated.
Yeah, beautiful.
Little things like walking on floorboards, there's saw-cut feel. So when you're barefoot, you get that feel, that connection to earth again. And I think that's something that's very Australian. Australians also, we have great architecture with big windows and this connection to the inside and outside.
Absolutely.
I think that will be continued to be celebrated as well moving forward. And I think also then when we look towards technology coming into our home spaces, all of those things are being heroed even more, that we need to work out how do we disconnect from screen time, have those quiet spots to sit, relax, tune out. TVs, as you probably noticed, are all being hidden away. They're always behind a screen or in a cupboard. And I think that will have a knock-on effect to the greater community as well, where you see so many places with these ginormous televisions. And I feel like that's not going to be a thing of the future. I just see more and more projects where people want to hide away that or have a smaller version of it, you know.
I really appreciate that. So my house, I actually live, as I mentioned, I live close to the bay in Melbourne, and the whole house was built, oriented basically with your back to the beautiful view to look at the television. And it drives me crazy. I'm like, they should build houses. Like, I want to look outside. Like, we've actually just done some amazing things with mirrors in the house because the whole house is oriented toward looking at a TV, and like that's not how I live my life. Like, I want to be looking at the beautiful view and be inspired by that. So I completely hear you. It has been such an absolute pleasure having you on the Well Dressed Mom.
Well, thank you for having me.
And you are so fascinating. Like, this could have been. We could do a mini series. Like, I feel like I could talk to you for 10 more hours. But it's just fascinating. Yeah. So we'll love to have you back again and have you on another episode. Cause
thank you so much.
Conversation. So.
And congratulations on the new collection.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure it's going to be a hit.
We're very excited.